Hello, welcome. This is Pastor Rich Klein from Cornerstone Fellowship with a little bit of daily bread for you. This is going to be part one of a three-part series that I'm going to call How I Pray the Psalms devotionally. Some of you have heard me talk about how I've prayed the Psalms for a number of years now and the impact that it's made on my life personally, devotionally. So I just want to take you to Psalm 89 and give you an example. We're just going to use a part of Psalm 89. And please don't judge this, scholarly or theologically, but devotionally. This is how a Jew or a 21st century Christian would pray the Psalms. So I'm going to read first of all from Psalm 89, verses 19 all the way through verse number 37. And this time I'm reading from the Passion Translation of Bible. I'm not trying to sell this, or I don't get any kickbacks from the Passion Translation. I've prayed the Psalms in 3 different translations now, and this is the one I'm currently using. I like it because it uses the language of love. But you can go to BibleGateway.com and point your browser to Psalm 89, verses 19 through 37. And this is what it would sound like in the Passion Translation of the Bible. You spoke to your prophets in visions, saying, I have found a mighty hero for my people. I have chosen David as my loving servant and exalted him. I have anointed him as king with the oil of my holiness. I will be strength to him, and I will give him my grace to sustain him no matter what comes. None of his enemies will get the best of him, nor will the wicked one overpower him. For I will crush his every adversary and do away with all who hate him, because I love him and I treasure him. My faithfulness will always protect him. I will place my great favor upon him, and I will cause his power and fame to increase. I will set his hand over the sea and his right hand over the rivers, and he will come before me, saying, You truly are my Father, my only God, and my strong deliverer. I am setting him apart, favoring him as my firstborn son. I will make him the most high king in all the earth. I will love him forever and always show him my kindness. My covenant will be with him, and my covenant with him will never be broken, for I have decreed that he will always have an heir, a dynasty that will release the days of heaven on earth. But if his children turn away from me and forsake my words, refusing to walk in my truth, renouncing and violating my laws, then I will surely punish them for their sins with my stern discipline until they regret it. But I will never lift my faithful love from off their lives. My kindness will prevail, and I will never disown them. How could I revoke my covenant of love that I promised to David? For I have given him my word, my holy, irrevocable word. How could I lie to my loving servant David? Sons of David will continue to reign on his throne, and their kingdom will endure as long as the sun is in the sky. This covenant will be an unbreakable promise that I have established for all time. And then that amazing word, Selah. So, in a nutshell, what I do when I read a psalm like this is I first of all read it for its intended audience. I read it for its intended purpose as written to God's people, the Jews. I read it that way, and when I read it that way, I remember that David was a historical figure. I remember that he was the great king. And then I start to remember that God promised him so many things. One of those things is that he would never lack a descendant upon his throne. that causes me to fast forward and remember that the New Testament writers would say that Jesus Christ of Nazareth would be then considered to be the legitimate descendant of David. As a descendant of David, Jesus would inherit all the promises that God had made to David. Jesus would inherit that covenant. In fact, the covenant would be further expanded and even opened up further to include more people. But the covenant that God made with David would find its ultimate fulfillment in Jesus Christ. Then, being an heir and a joint heir with Jesus Christ through his finished work at Calvary, through the blood of Christ, we're adopted into the family of God. Our sins are forgiven, and a covenant is made with us. It's an extenuation of the covenant that God made with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and David and Jesus, and it comes to us, and it's a fulfillment of all the covenants that God had made. So when I read this devotionally, I start to think in terms of what this psalm would have meant to David, how he is figured into it, even though David didn't probably write this psalm, but how David is figured into this particular poem. Then I think of how Jesus would have taken that psalm and he would have read it and how he would have prayed it, how the eternal Son that God found in David then would suddenly become an eternal Son that is true of Jesus. And then I would, last of all, humbly accept that through Jesus' work, somehow, some way, I've been included in that covenant, and now I get to not rule from the throne, but what God has decreed and what God has promised. I'm able to take those words on my lips, and I'm able to say, God, you've said this, and you have said that. And just like the psalmist would do, remind God of what he had said and what he had promised. So before I go, I just want to point out to you very quickly several different items that you can look when you look at Psalm 89 and verses 19 through 37 there. First of all, you can see that God chose for himself a son. Then you can see that God makes a covenant with that son. And then he establishes a throne. And then he establishes a condition. And then finally, he remembers his covenant. So what a multifaceted psalm this is. This isn't just beautiful poetry that we would find helpful and maybe comforting in a time of trouble. It is that. But Jesus in his day, he would have taken this psalm on his lips and he would have prayed this psalm. And when he prayed this psalm, everything that was true of David, then he began to claim it for himself. How much more so for Jesus Christ? And so I'm thinking, when I am reciting this psalm as a prayer to the Lord, I am thinking, wherever I see the name David, I can insert the name Jesus. And then at another level, I humbly realized that in one sense, I could insert my own name, or you could insert your name. So when I'm praying through this, I'm actually thinking in three different levels: David, Jesus, myself. I want you to ponder that. Take that to the Lord and ask him to show you how you might learn to pray the Psalms for yourself effectively and fervently. God bless you. See you again soon.